We are live on Facebook. Hello, Facebook friends. I'm Love Coach Scott Katamas, and welcome to tonight's Compassionate Talk. And we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. I'm really excited. I've got some of my favorite love coaches with us, and one of my favorite human beings on the planet, Roxanne De Palma, who I've known for about 8 years. She's got an amazing spirit. She's funny. She's playful. She's very wise. And she's got a big heart. And so we haven't decided really much about what we're going to talk about. So if any of you have thoughts, questions, issues, bring them. And also joining us will be Angel and Paul McFarlane and Trish Wright. So really, really cool people to talk about interesting stuff. So with no further ado, let me introduce you to the one and only Foxy Roxie. There she is with an orchid in your hair.
No, it's an orange blossom.
An orange blossom in your hair. I knew that. Actually, I meant that. I got distracted by your beauty for a moment there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put it in my hair today because I needed a little extra support because I noticed that I felt emotional waking up and I was irritated. And we have this miniature orange tree in our backyard, which produces a lot of blossoms and not a lot of fruit. And so I felt okay with taking some foliage and flower because the smell is wafting down and it just smells good.
I hope you don't mind my mentioning it, but Roxy and I sometimes leave each other messages, audio messages. And this was the very first time I think I've received an audio message from you pre-qualia. And so you were like really quiet and really like, this is Roxy. And it was a different tone. A different quiet tone. And one of the things when we were just chatting before going on live, I'd love to just talk about what you brought up initially. I asked what's alive for you today, and your answer was?
Well, I think the first thing I said was that my moon was here, and I noticed that anytime I'm in an emotional funk or I feel any of the HALT, the hungry, angry, lonely, tired, I love that acronym, that I never use that as an excuse to treat people poorly or to withhold love. And I'm not saying that I do it perfectly all the time, but I don't ever want to feel entitled in my pain or my misery so much so that other people feel the brunt of it. And so my moon, my blood, my period, however you like to call it, is like it's upon me. Blood hasn't revealed itself yet, but I noticed that I wanted to withhold love this morning. I was banging cups around in the kitchen and nobody was up, so it didn't bother anyone. But I had to really rein it in and say, wait, I want to show up and be a stand for love. Of course, I want to let myself feel my feelings. And if I am my thoughts, why do I want to just cultivate this shit mood just because my hormones are having a moment? I am not going to let my hormones run the show right now. The hormone monster does not get to take over. And I have, I've trained a lot and done a lot of work to not let my hormones run me. It's a monthly.
So let's go a little further. So let's go a little further with that, because this is something that people don't talk.
Oh. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, go further, because this is a topic that people don't talk about that often. I mean, we're back in, the generation before us, it was like nobody ever talked about it, right? So talking about the sanctity of your moon cycle, the beauty of it, the challenges of it, and learning to work with your hormones. What are some of the challenges you've had with that? And do you have any tips or tools that have helped you learn how to manage it?
Yeah, so first I want to just give deep gratitude to all of the women and the matriarchs that came before me that showed me how to love my moon cycle. And I was fortunate enough to have that experience of it basically when my moon first started. I know there's a lot of women, throughout the ages who lead red tents, and there's this deep honoring of the feminine cycle. And so what I'm sharing is not a new evolution. And I really deeply just honor all the women who are bleeding, who are in a phase of not bleeding, who've never bled. I mean, there's some women don't have uteruses, or they've never had a cycle. And so I want to honor all the female bodied folks who are estrogen dominant. Maybe there's even estrogen dominant folks on here who don't identify as women who bleed, and that's a pain point for them because they don't want to bleed. They're like, I don't identify as a woman, yet I'm bleeding every month, and this isn't a fun thing for me. And so I really want to be inclusive in my speech. If I say anything that doesn't sound inclusive, I want it like, please give me the benefit of the doubt that I am doing my best to include all. And basically what this comes down to, it's not so much as even honoring the blood for me. I mean, it is. I do all kinds of fun ritual with my blood, but it's more about, for whatever your gender is that you identify as, whatever sex you were born into, I am of the school of thought that, again, if you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, hormonal, whatever it is never an excuse to feel entitled to treat people close to you, or even the barista at the coffee shop or the checker at the store, to treat them poorly. That it's always our responsibility to manage those feelings. And I don't want to shame anybody who, if that's a challenge for them, because I get not everybody has had the luxury to learn how to do that. Some people are in survival mode and they're like, fuck you, Roxanne, I'm just trying to put food on my table. Don't try to tell me that I need to be nice when I'm going and working a 17-hour workday, and then I've got to come home and feed 3 mouths, and you're telling me that I need to be in a good mood. That is not what I'm saying. Like, I want to be really careful here, because I believe that, I don't want to put on anybody the way that I do things. And the personal way that I like to manage is just to be, to be responsible with my feelings and my emotions. And if I'm in a funk, to do the things I know to take care of myself. And if those things aren't available to me, for example, we're all quarantined right now. Scott asked me earlier before this call, how are you doing with quarantine, Roxanne? And I said, well, on a personal level, I'm doing fucking great. I curse a lot too, so if that bothers you, I apologize. Anyway, the point is, I said, I'm doing great. I'm easily entertained. I self-amuse myself. And I also have this luxury and privilege of having a home and food. And I've got partners, lovers around me, people around me that are, I'm not deficient in touch right now. And I get that that's a privilege. Like, I really, really get that, and I honor it. And I also have friends who have the same kind of privilege around me, but they're depressed, and they're at home complaining and whining, and they don't know what to do with themselves, and they're in a hole, and they can't even get up to make coffee or juice in the morning. And I want to honor the people that actually have, whether it's low grade depression or like full on clinical depression, that you used to have. I don't care how much money you had or how many homes you have. Like, if you had a way of managing your depression before where you were able to go out, and now you're quarantined in a home and you can't manage your depression, I had to pull out my empathy for all of these people, because my thought was, what are they complaining about? They have everything they need right now. Why are they bitching and moaning and screaming? And I thought, oh shit, pull out my empathy, my compassion. Like, they don't have the way they normally manage their depression. And so I have a lot of deep empathy and compassion for people who don't have the luxury of having, I don't know, like the chemicals in their brain balanced. And I'm pretty balanced chemically all over in my body. And for whatever reason, genetics, food, I don't know. I mean, we all have different dispositions in life. And so, I guess what it comes down to is always more empathy and more compassion. That's the gist of it. And stick an orange blossom in your hair if you need to every once in a while.
Well, I also have known you for 8 years, and you lead a very balanced life. You do a lot of dance, a lot of yoga, you eat healthy. I mean, it seems like every day. There's 2 things that I see Roxie posting. Roxie on the pole dancing, which is usually my lunch break. I get to watch Roxie on the pole. And these amazing things that you're making. I mean, all these beautiful, delicious, healthy primarily vegan. I think they're always vegan meals that you're posting. So you lead a balanced life, Roxie. But I'm also really appreciating how inclusive you are. You're really someone who's one of the most inclusive people I know. And that's something I really, really respect and appreciate about you. And just now, like, you wanted to make sure that you weren't saying anything that was going to alienate somebody who's got a different set of life circumstances. And that's a consciousness, that's an awareness, that is really walking the talk of being compassionate. Compassion is not just feeling sorry for somebody or being nicey nice. It's actually being aware of another person's reality or possible reality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was interesting because I have this, I mean, I'll just share a personal story. I have this, this lover who is far away right now. And I don't get to see this person right now. And it feels like my body, the last time I saw them was exactly a month ago when I was having my period. It was the first day of my period. They showed up at my house and we got to have this 4 days of just bliss together. And it was amazing. And I'm purposefully not saying their name or if it's a man or a woman, because I don't want you to go try to figure it out, because they are anonymous in my world, based on circumstances. So the point is, I couldn't, like last night, I was in this body trauma and I was aching and I was hurting and my body needed to be with them. And I couldn't figure out why and like what was happening. And I did everything I could. I thought about them. I had a fun fantasy. I felt pleasured. I tried to like drink some CalMag tea and just go to sleep. But I was restless all night. And I woke up this morning and the second my uterus started contracting, it was like, everything about this person just came rushing into my system. And I thought, oh my God, the last time I was having my period, they were with me and we were being very sexual. And my body was having this visceral memory. And so I know that was part of my irritation as well. And I think that I started thinking about right relationship. I'm going to cut into a whole different conversation right now, Scott. When I was thinking about right relationship, I thought, I had an out of town lover that I met last year. And again, I'm going to keep them anonymous because I don't know if they want to not be anonymous. And my body never felt like angsty at not seeing them. And because right relationship with them was, hey, we knew we were out of town lovers and we were long distance and that's what it was. And so it felt calm in my body. And the fact that this particular person right now, who is my lover that I can't see, we're not supposed to be long distance out of town lovers. It was just circumstances, COVID, that separated us. And it's really interesting to feel like that wrong relationship in my body, that our bodies can't be touching. And I'm thinking about all the people right now and throughout the ages. I mean, partners of people in the military where their bodies can't touch, and then they're in monogamous relationships and they can't get any affection because that's cheating. And like, what the fuck? Now for the whole world, I'm especially having empathy for people who have a lot of testosterone in their body, because testosterone in the body is a whole other level of experience. And how do I know that? I have a story, if Scott wants to hear it, about taking testosterone on accident. So I got to feel what it was like to be a testosterone holder for a week. And it's like the sex craving for most people who are estrogen dominant it's a different kind of experience. It's not the pushing forward that testosterone does and like needing to fuck, if you will. Forgive the vulgarity, but that's the image. And with estrogen, it can become a little more balanced. And I know there's some estrogen dominant people who have more testosterone, but estrogen dominance it's a thing. And so is testosterone dominance. So anyway, I'll stop talking so you can speak, because I know I said a lot.
Well, I think what I really want us to make this the topic of that you started to go to is right relationship. What does right relationship mean? So I'm going to probably bring in at least one more love coach just to talk about this a little bit. But I want to primarily hear from you because you are amazing and you have a very unique world view, honestly, and this beautiful world view. I love it. And look, I'm a relationship coach. I've coached at least 500 couples. I've coached at least 1,000 people. And what is right relationship? And when is our body informing us in a way that's accurate? And when is our body leading us on the road to hell, right? And you know, and really, I mean, I have some theories about it, and so let's make that the topic. And so I put that out to the people in our, who are chatting in our different watch parties. And I do want to say hi to Ellie McLeod from Scotland, who sent flowers to you, Roxie. So I love that we have somebody from Scotland. And hello, Shar, and all of our other friends who are watching. So what for you connotates, and I do want to hear about the testosterone experience, but just before we get there, since I'm now naming that this is going to be about right relationship, what to you connotates or is a right relationship, and how do you know, or what are the signals, the signs that you look for?
Are you asking me or Ellie?
I'm asking you, honey.
You're
me.
Okay.
You're the star of the show.
Oh, well, that's nice. We can share that space. The right relationship. So personally, right relationship always feels gentle in my whole system. It doesn't mean that conflict doesn't arise and, like mild arguments happen, but there's a gentleness that when I breathe, there's no contraction around being with this person. And so, like, I know that people watching or who are going to watch this have been, and me personally, I've been in situations where somebody wants to maybe take our platonic friendship into a sensual cuddle. And they might ask me that, or a business, or somebody might want to do a business with me, right? And there's a pause in my body that's not saying, hell fucking yes, I want to do this. And that, when I'm not just up and down, top to bottom, all the way inside, outside, hell fucking yes to something, to me, that tells me it's not right relationship. And it might mean that something needs to get cleared before we move into that right relationship. And it might mean like we just say no to that offering. And that actually feels good. And so I check in with all of my centers. I check in with, whether you want to check in with all of your chakras, whether you want to do the head, heart, belly, sex check-in, whether you want to check in with all of your cells, whether you want to check in with your guides. But I always check in with my body. And every time that I have gone into a relationship with someone or kept doing a relationship where it wasn't a hell yes all the way through and through, I've suffered, and the other person suffered. And the place where it gets tricky is long-term relationship, where you don't want to just give up. And so I always find it helpful to bring in somebody from the outside who can support, such as Scott Katamas, love coach extraordinaire, that can support and really like kind of stilling the waters to actually see what right relationship is. Because in all of my relationships that I've had in the past 8 years, or 9 years, I should say, actually, we have this agreement that we won't make any relationship changes out of anger or frustration. And there's been one time where that got broken, but it was, there was so much compounding of trauma just over and over on this one particular aspect of this particular relationship configuration that I was in, which again, I don't want to name names right now. Not all of the people that I'm in relationship with are as public as I am. And my system had a way of doing too much, where I would just keep taking it. I keep taking it. And I'd be like, I got this. I got this. I got this. I will run on this broken leg until I cross the finish line because I'm committed to that. And then I couldn't actually cross the finish line. Like I couldn't actually break up from a loving place because the leg was so busted up before I got to the broken line. Like I had to metaphorically go to the hospital. And so there was one time, and I learned from that. I learned that, wow, way before I have to learn what my red light signals are, or like my yellow light. I need to learn my yellow lights are so that I can pause and really get some help before we start running on a broken leg. That's a little
I'm
bit.
so appreciating all your wisdom. And in a moment, Angel, I'm going to want to hear what right relationship means to you. But I want to acknowledge Ellie McLeod's question. Do you think closeness slows down in the over 50s age group? Roxie is not over 50. She's way under. But Angel and I are both
42.
over. I know, you're 42. You're getting up there, darling.
I want to know what Ellie means by closeness.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, so Ellie, maybe put into the comments a little bit more about what you mean by closeness. But I'll just say my relationships have gotten better and better and better. As each year goes by, for me now, I'm a relationship guy and I study it, but my relationships just keep getting better, both my friendships and when I'm in a romantic relationship. So, but what I do think is true, especially as we get older, is we become more and more discerning. We become more and more choosy, more and more selective. So we might not be having as many experiences and we aren't as quick to jump into closeness, whether closeness means emotional intimacy or friendship or sexual intimacy. I think we go slower and we're choosier, and I like the word discernment. Angel, what are your thoughts about closeness because you're in your 50s now? And then I also want to hear your thoughts about what right relationship means to you. Angel's all the way in Bali, and we still can't hear you, brother. Nope.
He is not having right relationship right now with his head earbuds.
Yep. Well, just for you real quickly, as you get older, do you find you become more discerning, Roxie?
Okay, so here's the thing. I think when somebody has actually worked on their shadow aspects of themselves and their childhood wounding and all of that, I think, yes, I've noticed people and myself get more discerning. But when somebody is just walking around and hasn't done any shadow work, any childhood work, I don't think they get less discerning. I think they get hardened and jaded. And hardened and jaded and just shutting down to people is a lot different than like Scott or Angel. You've done a lot of work on yourselves. And so, yes, now you're more discerning, which I wouldn't say that you're inherently more discerning just because you get older and just because you're more picky. Because I don't associate being more picky or more hardened in the same discernment. Because discernment means you're actually looking not just at the small sovereignty of what your needs are, but you're looking at the whole ecosystem. And that's an interesting one right now. Like actual sovereignty really is not just about your needs and what you want. It's like sovereignty is you and everybody else around you, because you can't just make a sovereign decision just for you, because we're all so connected. And so you're going to be making better decisions when you get older if you've done some work.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda. And I was listening to an audio of him from probably back in the 30s or 40s. And he was talking about how all beings, if you're a human being, you've got karma, you've got lessons to learn. So somebody said, what's your lesson? Which I thought was great. And he said, discernment. That discernment is one of the last lessons as we get older, as we become more conscious. And I really love the word discernment because it's a very healthy alternative to judgment. And for me, discernment is conscious choice. We're making a conscious choice, and we can do it without judging someone, you know. But we can just like, okay, how does this feel in my body? How does this feel? And so I think that that's a lot of what we want to raise our consciousness to be discerning in our choice making. And let's see if Angel is hearable. Try speaking. No,
Oh,
no. Oh, and Angel is so wise.
he is wise.
Yeah, that's right, because you've known him. Yeah. He's
Yeah.
he's gonna go out and come back in. That's a good idea.
Okay, cool.
So
Yeah,
so
discernment's something I've actually been working on because I think I've had shitty discernment my whole life. And I started smoking pot when I was 12 years old, and I was a pothead all throughout my teenage years, all throughout my 20s, and I was on and off pot in my 30s.
mm,
And I was mostly off of it, but I went through a 2-year period where I was heavily smoking pot, and it actually compromised heavily the relationships that I was in at the time. And I swear the new relationships, whether they were friendship, romantic, sexual, business, that I got into when I was smoking pot heavily, it took my discernment just down to the bottom of the trash. It was bad.
mm,
And that's for me personally. Maybe for some people, pot doesn't affect them that way, but the way that that chemistry hits my system is is not good. So I'm actually
mm.
learning discernment right now, and part of that for me is clear-mindedness. I mean, things like mushrooms, different psychedelics, a little bit of alcohol, it doesn't alter my discernment in the same way. I don't really like to drink because it hurts my tummy. But something about me and marijuana, it just takes my discernment to a whole new level of bad. And so I'm
Well,
happy to say that I haven't smoked pot in over 2 years, and my discernment has been impeccable.
well, I respect that. And for anybody listening, it is really important, just on that note, to not make important decisions when you're under the influence. Now, there's the obvious things of under the influence of alcohol or pot or psychedelics, but also there's the under the influence of sexual attraction, right? And that's like the biggest intoxicant of all, right? And so, again, if we want to be making wise choices, and the theme being right relationship, when have we gone into a relationship when we were under the influence of a drug or of alcohol or of sexual intoxication? Which is a perfect segue for you to tell us your story about testosterone.
Oh, well, okay. But first, before I say that, I want to say I love marijuana, and I do not judge people who smoke weed. I mean, it is your own body, your own choice. Do what you got to do. Cannabis is beautiful. I think she's glorious, and I just wanted to make sure people weren't feeling judged.
You're so good
And
about that. You really are. I should like just always have you on everyone to make sure that I'm always staying as inclusive as possible. You have got such a beautiful value for inclusivity. I really appreciate that. And
thank
consideration.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I've always, I have that deep inclusivity in myself, and it was brought to my attention, some years ago, that when I expressed my experience, that if I didn't say this other piece about, hey, this might not be your experience, that it was actually sounded like a put down for people, or my way was the right way. And so I learned actually through causing a lot of pain to people, and like having people feel shamed and judged by me. And I was like, wait, that's the opposite of my message. So I had to learn how to insert inclusivity into my actual speech. So thank you for saying that. That
Yeah,
means
I'm learning from you. It's like, okay, I
that.
got to remember to do this. I got to remember, because I'm in an authority figure now. I'm the wise elder. And so you're right. It's like when we're up here and we're pontificating, we do have to be sensitive to that. So thank you. You're raising my awareness.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the chemical high of hormones and relationship and endorphins and testosterone, like serotonin and oxytocin. And like when we get those rushes, we're not in love, we're in a chemical high. That it's just, It is intoxicating, and it's the most common thing in the world to meet someone and fall in love. And oxytocin retards the time part of your brain, so that way you think, I've just known them for so long. I feel like we've known each other for lifetimes. And you're like, no, your oxytocin is fucking you up, and you're getting these serotonin hits, and you're so happy with everything that they do, even like the stupid asinine shit that like 5-6 months into it, you're like, how did I even be with that person?
Right. And I love the things that we do when we're in that state to prove that you're the one. Do you like dogs? You like dogs? I love dogs. Oh, wait a minute. Do you like the sky? I love the sky. It's like who doesn't love dogs in the sky, right? So anyway, go for it.
Well, I was thinking, like, I actually came to a place, again, this is me personally, but I also give this advice to people when they ask me for it, of course, that I don't trust my attraction to people. When I find myself in that, like, oh my God, who is that just walked in the room, and I feel this like lust and heat and attraction, my first thought these days is I am dubious of that, because all that is some like chemicals interacting in my body saying I want to procreate with them. My body wants to procreate, whether it's an estrogen dominant or testosterone dominant person. I don't trust it. And so I actually like to let those feelings calm down a little bit and get to know someone and go really slow. Like, as far as, because when if I just jumped in the sack with them or just jumped into like heavy petting and heavy making out, it's just gonna solidify those feelings even more that this is right, because those chemicals are just going to come in and take over. So testosterone. Here's the story of testosterone. I was living with somebody one time. Again, I'm being vague right now. And they were taking testosterone. And I had a really bad parasite in my body, and it took down my whole system. So my adrenals were trashed, my hormones were trashed, my digestion was trashed. I mean, I have never had my body taken down like this. And I am a plow horse you can go put out in the field and put a hoe on me, and I will go for days and days. And so I'd never been taken down. So part of my rebuild was I had to rebuild my adrenals, rebuild my gut, and rebuild my hormones. And part of rebuilding my hormones was taking testosterone, because I had no testosterone in my body. My doctor at the time told me, you have the testosterone of a 90-year-old woman, which as women age, our testosterone goes down, or estrogen dominant people, as they age, the testosterone goes down. What happens? So the person I was living with, they were taking testosterone too. And it was a man, a cisgendered biological man who had testosterone, but he was taking testosterone for a different reason. His bottle was 20% testosterone. My bottle was 0.02. 20%, 0.02 is a fucking radical difference. Hormones, you don't need a lot of hormones in order to make a change. This is why they're very dangerous chemicals, by the way. And so if you're ever going to go get on any kind of hormone replacement or change or anything, definitely talk to a professional, because it'll fuck with you. We went on a vacation together and our bottles got switched. Same doctor, same bottle. So and he was a lover of mine. For 1 week, I was taking his testosterone, and I wanted to bang my dick on everything. I wanted to put it in everyone. I was like, I had to look at people's eyes, and I was like looking down at their genitals. Oh, no, look up, Roxanne, look up. And all I could hear in the back of my head was all of my friends from when I was younger saying how much, my spiritual male friends, saying how they had to train themselves to look above the neck, because they just, and all of my training that I'd done with like men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and we're different creatures. I had a cognitive experience of men had a different reality than women, or testosterone holders had a different reality than estrogen holders, but I didn't have a visceral physiological experience. And literally for this 1 week, all I could think about was sex. And I would self-pleasure, I would orgasm multiple times a day. I had constant blue balls. It was terrible. And after a week, my partner was like, what is going on with you? Like, he couldn't keep up with me. He's like, this is intense. Ooh, I think there's just an earthquake at our house. Anyway, the point is, he goes, let me see your testosterone that you're taking. And he's like, this is mine. He was wondering why his hadn't been working. And it was it was an intoxicating, terrifying experience. Now, what the next thing I'm gonna say is kind of fucked up, but it's what my experience was. I had this thought when I got off it. I was like, how are men not walking around just raping everybody? Because it was just sex, fuck, 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 fuck. And I told this to this guy, and he's like, well, they kind of are. You know, there's like whole culture, like there's a whole rape culture that's pretty bad. And as a woman who's a survivor, a thriver of sexual abuse, let's say that, I feel comfortable speaking about this. And I I got off of it and I had this whole empathy towards men. I was like, God, men are so misunderstood. And if only every woman could have this experience of getting on testosterone and experiencing what it was like. Because as a woman, can't tell you the amount of times that I said in my head, can't you think with your other head? Why do you have to think with the head in your pants? They can't. They like you men have to actually train themselves to not think about sex when every single soft looking thing walks by that they could possibly insert themselves into. And so it's all about like more empathy for men. And then the same thing, like if a man got to actually have a female cycle, they would know what it's like to cry in the middle of the month for no reason and want to be held and push you away at the same time and have tender breasts and cramping and just feel melancholy for no reason. And so I think it would be great if somehow we could all have that experience. But again, it leads us back to not being led by our hormones. So there's a lot of men who have been influenced and, by really amazing women and other amazing men that, hey, you don't just get to put your penis wherever you want, whenever you want, because your hormones are raging. And there's really beautiful men and women who have trained other women to say, hey, you don't just get to be a fucking cunty bitch around your period time because you're having cramps and you're feeling hormonal and emotional. Like learn how to manage that. And so if you don't know how to manage that, there's a lot of places you can learn. And I'm not judging you if you haven't learned how to manage it, but it's a good skill.
Yeah.
It'll help.
And really thank you for the compassion, for us to, again, really imagine what it's like for the other. I want to mention one thing, and then we're going to give Angel another try.
Yay.
It's actually been proven that pheromones talk to each other. And when people are of procreation age, sexual chemistry is a very real thing. When a man meets a woman, and I appreciate transgender, but this is just from a scientific basis. When a man and a woman connect and they have a good DNA match, the pheromones talk to each other and say, let's make a baby. And so that's just been proven in, I think, like the last 10 years. So that's science. But I have something even better than science. Scott's belief system. Better than science. And this has come from coaching a lot of people that are out of procreation age. People that, kind of their past wanted to make babies. 40s, 50s, I'm in my 60s. I do believe that just like when people are procreation age and they're a good DNA match to make a baby, when we're a little bit beyond that, we still have a mutual attraction, but now the mutual attraction is my unresolved stuff and your unresolved stuff is going to come together and make a wonderful baby, but the baby's not going to be a human baby. The baby's going to be our dynamic, our misery go round, our puzzle, that if we approach it with consciousness and with the support of coaches like Roxie, Angel, or myself, we're going to learn and we're going to grow. And it may be our ancestral wounding, it may be our childhood wounding, but it's that stuff that we still need to resolve before this lifetime is over. And because it's remarkable. And this is not something that I knew or thought about 10, 15 years ago. But now that I've worked with over 500 couples, it's extraordinary to see how people match up. How the moment her abandonment stuff comes up, his fear of engulfment stuff comes up, right? Or whatever it might be. The moment she goes anxious, he goes avoidant, right? And so it's an extraordinary thing and important for us to really Learn how to listen. And this all comes back to right relationship, right? Okay. I'm totally attracted to this person. This person is totally attracted to me, but it's really hard. Okay, that hard is an opportunity for growth if both of you are willing to do the work. So I wanted to put that thought in, and I'm curious if you'd like to riff on that, or where you want to go next, Roxie.
Well, thanks for bringing it back to right relationship, because I can just go all over the board. So yeah, I think a lot of times people think that sexual attraction is the impetus for right relationship. And that's why I say I'm dubious of it, because more often than not, it's not. It's not. And it's really, really important to get clear on like your values systems, your bottom lines, your red lights, your boundaries, like what you know is an absolute no for you in a relationship, and like really be honest about that. And I know that's challenging for some people, because not everybody has a lot of options, and sometimes we settle because we want affection, we want sex, and it can be hard. It can be hard for somebody who's maybe not charismatic and is socially awkward, and maybe not as like good looking by societal standards, and then somebody comes along and they are getting touched in affection, and they're scared they're never going to get that again, and they don't have resources or access to someone to support them, like a coach or a love coach or anything for help. And so it's a challenging one, but yeah, when somebody comes to me, like a conscious couple or a triad or whatever your relating style is, because I really support people in open relating styles, but also monogamous. I support a lot of monogamous people, because relationship is relationship. That it's really important to constantly be calibrating, like recalibrating to what your right relationship is, because it's easy to get into a long-term relationship and be like, oh, well, we're together and we just made this commitment and we got married, and that's just what it is. And then you stop calibrating to that person, and all of a sudden you're 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, 10 years into a relationship, and you're in wrong relationship because you stopped being curious about who that person was. You stopped being curious about who you were. You stopped checking in with yourself. You stopped checking in with them. And I'll tell you, my partners and I, we check in with each other constantly about, are we in right relationship? We don't want to take for granted that just because we've made commitments to each other that we're just together forever and this is the way it is. Like the divorce rate is high. Like I'm just going to throw out like 70%, of married couples get divorced or have affairs or whatever it is. And it's because I actually don't know why that is, but the point is it happens. And so we never want to assume that, Mike, my husband and I never want to assume that, oh, we're never going to get divorced. We're different. Like we're the same as everybody else. We're just like you. We are at risk. And we might be at less risk because we're constantly checking in. We're constantly stalking our shadow. We're constantly looking at like, where can we grow? Where do we need time to integrate? Where do we need to soften? What's your need? What's your need? How can we show up? I mean, my husband asks me all the time, how can I be a better husband? How can I be a better husband? I ask him that question all the time. How can I be a better wife? And I would just like to say, if anybody has a better word or phrase than husband and wife, it's such like I'm not against it for other people, but it's ownership and
Partner,
and
spouse.
partner. No, that's like business. Spouse sounds like louse and life and like, I don't know. I'm looking for another word.
Beloved.
Yeah, beloved. I have a lot of beloveds. I mean, the grocery store clerk is my beloved. Yeah, I don't know. But, I mean, the polyamorous people, they did coin the term metamor, which is your lover's lover, and compersion. So whoever makes up words, can we make up a different word for husband and wife that still connects commitment to relationship and devotion and love and loyalty and all that without the ownership behind it? Again, no negativity. If you use that word, blessings on you. That's amazing. Love it. More power to you. It just,
A couple of great comments that have come in, a couple of questions. We will get a little bit later to the question about moving on after death of a partner, because that's a powerful question, which I can address because my wife died in the bed right behind me 8.5 years ago. But before we go there, I want to mention a couple of things, kind of riffing on right relationship. When we are romantically or sexually attracted to someone, even if we're married and we're monogamous, but we're really attracted to someone, what I found is useful. What are the qualities or the virtues or the character strengths that we imagine that person has that we want more of in our life? I'm going to say that one more time because I've found that this is a really good question to ask. When you are romantically or physically or sexually attracted to someone, and it can even be you're attracted to somebody of the same gender and it's not even sexual, but it's just, God, I really love her. I'm so attracted to him or her. What are the character strengths or the virtues or the values you imagine that person has that you're wanting to have more of in your life? And I'm using those words very carefully because it's what you imagine. It may or may not be who they truly are. For starters, wah, wah, there's that. And then it's like, okay, we usually attracted to someone who has some qualities we're wanting more of in our life. And then we project it onto that person. And so if you are attracted to someone, but you're not wanting to have an affair and you're trying to figure it out, that's a good question. Or if you're just practicing discernment, again, that's a good question to help in the discernment process. So how does that land for you, Roxie?
I think that's a great question to ask people. And I think everybody will have a different response. But yeah, it's brilliant. I love it.
Cool.
Yeah, because we do project onto people what we want them to be. And it's so easy to have a fantasy about somebody and then have it all come crashing down.
Well, now there's another reason why.
And then blame them for not being that fantasy.
Right. How dare you not be my fantasy, my projection of you, right?
Yeah.
There's another reason why sometimes it crashes down. And I love what Roxie said. She said a lot of really important parts. And stay curious, keep checking in. But there's another thing that happens, which is our brain is wired for survival. And when you meet somebody and you first fall in love, you're just seeing this person the way you want to see them. And they're sending you all this vibe of how awesome you are, how beautiful you are, how incredible you are, which feels great. And we're sending it back to them. So we're feeding a positive vision of each other, which is a wonderful thing. We go into a relationship. We start hanging out with this person, maybe living with this person, maybe making babies with this person. And every time we perceive that that person is blaming, shaming, judging, or criticizing us, our brain stores that memory. And our brain stores the memory of painful encounters at 5 to 30 times greater than the memory of pleasurable encounters. So if you're not clearing it and you're storing all of that, that's why that person who, when you first met, was the most beautiful person in the world, and 5 years later, you can't stand being in the same room with them because your brain stored too many memories of being blamed, shamed, judged, or criticized. So how do we avoid this? A, do our best not to blame, shame, judge, or criticize each other. And also check in when you think you're being blamed, shamed, judged, or criticized. Because as someone who works with people on this all the time, about half the time, it's just how we're interpreting what they're saying and doing. At least half the time, it's our interpretation. It's not their intention. So these are just a couple little things to remind us of as we stay in right relationship.
Yeah, and I like that you talked about the brain and patterns because we're such we're pattern seeking. You didn't talk about patterns, but anyway, you talked about brain chemistry. And
the patterns of behavior. Patterns of behavior.
Yeah, And so we'll seek out positive patterns in the beginning when it's good. And then when we feel blamed, shamed, or judged, we'll go in and seek out all the negative patterns and like make a whole list of things that they did wrong and be like, but there's this pattern that they have. And yeah, it can get nasty. And not the good kind of nasty.
Not the good kind of nasty. So stay curious. And I always like to tell my couples that I work with, after every time you've had an unpleasurable encounter, you must make love 5 to 30 times to balance it out. So those pleasurable encounters are balancing it out.
Yeah, if the cleaving energy is stronger than the bonding energy, the relationship will break.
That's right. Let's say that again and describe what that means. Give it an example.
If the cleaving, like the cutting energy, like a cleaver, if the cleaving energy is stronger than the bonding energy, then the relationship will break, which is essentially the same thing you said. If you have an argument, you have to make love 5 times, because if you have an argument or a judgment or a shaming or a blaming, that's the cleaving, the cutting energy, cutting that relationship. And so you actually have to make the bonding energy stronger. And again, like you said, it's not a 1-to-1 situation. So you have to go like 1 to 5 or 1 to 30 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I got that quote from a very wise man I know named Daniel Schmachtenberger, where he said, if the cleaving energy is stronger than the bonding energy, the relationship will break. And it's not an exact quote, but I got that from him. And yeah, he's my husband.
and I want to say to the world, and some of you have heard me say this, Daniel Schmachtenberger is the wisest man I know. He is an incredibly wise man. That he's that intelligent, with such a big heart. Wise, totally wise. And look at the wisdom he had to marry you. So that's wisdom.
Scott's trying to make me blush right now. We have a good thing, and we don't take it for granted. And I know he would reject the idea that he is the wisest man on the planet, because he's not into superlatives. Superlatives meaning like the wisest or the smartest or the anything. Like everyone's got
that's what, see, there I'm not being inclusive. I'm being comparison. You're busting me on all these things we're not supposed to do. Thou shalt, NVC, thou shalt not compare. So, which is true. I mean, it is good to not use comparative language, but I like to break the rules sometimes.
It's an interesting one. I'll sidetrack for a minute, because I hear I'll just use the term husband and wife because it's easy right now. I'll see a husband walk into a room with his wife, and he will loudly say in front of a group of women and men, "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever met." And like every other woman in there is going, "Well, fuck you, man. Like, well, that's awesome." And you just put everybody down here. Or a woman will come in and say, "My husband is the hottest man ever." And it's like all the other guys are like, "What?" And so I heard this small child one time. He had polyamorous parents, and he was raised very open and super healthy young kid. And one time he said, he came home and he told his mom, like, "Mom, I don't think you're the best mom in the world, because that would mean all the other moms in the world aren't the best moms in the world. And I think you're one of the best moms." And I just thought, what a sweet little creature he was, to acknowledge all the moms are doing the best that they can.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
Right relationship. Right relationship is something that I am so deeply interested in, especially right now. And I'll go back to the gentleness. I'm doing this program with a woman named Christina Solaris called the Omega Codex. Go look it up. Just the website's beautiful. And part of this teaching is this really all about right relationship. And it's all about cutting ties, clearing out any relationship that was not made in love. And it just brings it back to right relationship for me, because relationships that are made in love, whether it's with food or a person or a glass of wine or a relationship with business or whatever, a friend, if it's made in love and it's like a full body alignment and every cell of your body is like a hell yes to it, it's more than likely going to be a good relationship. And it's more than likely going to be a gentle entry, because it's all about gentleness. And again, I said this earlier, like right relationship feels gentle, and it doesn't mean that you stop rolling up your sleeves and doing the dirty work. You know, someone's got to put a shovel on the ground. And it's okay to break a sweat and it's okay to get dirty, but just gentle. Like if I was going to give somebody,
I love those words, gentle entry. I mean, I just want to, that's a really
yeah,
beautiful pair of words. And by the way, I want to acknowledge Satyan Raja is watching and just sent us a nice comment. And Satyan's going to be my guest Wednesday night.
nice.
And he's a very wise man. He's going to be my guest on Wednesday night. So good to see you, Satyan. And hello to all the people watching. So just want to acknowledge you. Yeah.
I have a low-key crush on his wife. She is so sexy. We wrestled one time and she let me pin her down to the ground. It was, I mean, she's just like professional jiu-jitsu wrestling. She could have just kicked my ass in a heartbeat. It was so fun. So like, I was like, oh, this is hot. Anyway, that's my ooh, confession.
Yeah, well, Satyan and Suzanne, they're a hot couple. They are. They're a beautiful, beautiful couple. Yeah.
They are stunning, and I love Satyan, and I got to meet his wife. We were in a program together, and it was just really sweet to connect with her. I loved her energy, and I've always crushed on her since then. And I think I told her that, and I go in her page sometimes and just gush on her and put hearts and stuff. And this brings it back to right relationship. It doesn't mean that propositioning her to be sexual or propositioning her for a date or relationship, it doesn't mean that would be right relationship. It's just for me to notice, oh, I have an attraction. I wonder what's there. Maybe right relationship for us is just talking on Facebook every once in a while on a post. Maybe it's us doing a project together. Maybe right relationship is me having this attraction for her, and just she's my muse, you know, and she inspires me to do some creative project or to be more empowered and go take a self-defense class, you know, like who knows? So right relationship with attraction doesn't mean act on it. Doesn't mean
absolutely.
Do it.
So, you know, I'm going to get personal because you and I recently had an experience where we kind of like that. We hadn't seen each other for a while. I was in San Diego, and I primarily was staying with another friend, but one night Roxie invited, hey, let's hang out. And we weren't able to get together until I think 8:30 at night. And so I came over and we're cuddling on the couch. And Daniel was off saving the world somewhere. He wasn't around. And I've always had a crush on Roxie. And Roxie's, you know, been affectionate back. And so I was there and I'm holding Roxie and we're cuddling and I'm going to spend the night. And I mean, I assume in the guest room, not necessarily with her. But there were those thoughts. It's like, oh, what do I do here? And what's she imagining? And what am I imagining? And it was really cool because it felt so comfortable just cuddling with you. And it also felt comfortable when we finally talked about it. And nothing happened of any kind of other than we had a really lovely cuddle. And it was nice because 10 years earlier, well, no, for me, 15 years earlier, I would have probably felt like I was supposed to make a move, right? Like, you know, I'm in this position, I should make a move because I'm hot for her and here I am and I'm alone. But every time I tuned in, I was like, no, I don't get that it's supposed to go anywhere beyond where we are right now. And so I guess I'm just kind of acknowledging that little moment that we had of tuning into what is right relationship, you know?
Yeah, that was interesting too, because, well, first I want to say that the wrestling that I did with Suzanne was non-sexual wrestling. I don't want to confuse people.
Okay, and Satyan, by the way, Satyan in the comments wrote that he's blushing. And he's saying, I'm really getting a lot from this for myself. You both are so embodied wise. Thank you, Satyan. I respect you so much. And I cannot wait to have you on the show on Wednesday night.
It's getting dark. Wait, so the thing with us cuddling on the couch, I had a moment of regret, and it wasn't in our interaction. It was that because I've always been sexually attracted to you. We had a moment at a snuggle party 8 years ago where we kissed and it was fun. And then, we went our separate ways into different relationships. But the point is we've always stayed friends and we've always stayed connected. And I fell into I stopped getting curious with you, and I got too comfortable, because if it was anybody else, before I even laid on that couch with them in a horizontal position or even sat really close, I would have had the conversation. Hey, I would like to do some non-sexual cuddling right now. No grinding, no kissing, no touching my breasts, no touching my genitals. Let's just cuddle like two puppies. We can acknowledge that there's sexual chemistry there, but I don't want to move it energetically. I don't want to move it physically. And I didn't do that. And what it did was it created confusion, like where you were wondering, even though it was a really small wondering, you're like, should we not be doing it? And I even had a moment of wondering, like, what's he thinking right now? And I was like, why didn't we talk beforehand? And it was because I was lazy. And most people will do shit either because they're uncomfortable and they don't want to do it, or they're just lazy, or they use lazy because they're uncomfortable.
Right.
Anyway, so that was my regret.
And instead of talking about it, they drink a lot of alcohol or they get stoned.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's, so common. And I've been there, where it's too awkward to talk about it. So let's drink enough alcohol or smoke enough pot or whatever drug of choice to either talk about it or most of the time just move into an experience without talking about it.
Yeah.
And, and that's, I did one of my Emmy Award-winning television shows was for teenagers on adolescent pregnancy prevention. And the thesis statement of the show was, if you're not old enough to talk about it, you're not old enough to do it. And again, it's same with adults. So thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna turn on my lights for a moment too. So hang on a second.
God, the fan. Do I have to stop talking? Can you hear me still? I love talking.
All right.
Scott, you can't hear me.
Let there be light.
Okay, so I personally do not interact with people, whether it's business, romantic, sexual. I don't start any kind of new relational energy ever if there's any intoxication happening. If there's like, if someone comes to me and they're like looking up to me because they think I'm really pretty, or if they happen to like girls with blue eyes and they're like, oh wow, or if they hear me talking about relationship and they hear my emotional intelligence and they're just enamored with me, I'm like, oh no, let's fucking cut through that shit, and we're not going to interact from that place because you're not sober right now. So yeah, I never interact with somebody sexually if they're not sober, unless it's a pre-existing lover that we have a lot of experience with, like a lot, and I know their bottom lines and their boundaries and their agreements, and there's not going to be any, non-consensual. But yeah, when I used to lead, I've taken a break from it, but when I used to lead parties, it was always, I would never lead a sex party, a play party, a snuggle party, a play lab, cuddle, whatever the fuck it was. Nobody was allowed. Everybody had to be sober, period. Because you can't be in consent if you're not sober. And I have a lot of friends who have various kinds of play parties with all of their close people, and there might be some psychedelics or a little wine, and I'm like, cool, that's cool. But when there's new people and you all don't know each other and you don't have those boundaries, there is so much room for error. And I have just seen it go awry too many times to where I don't want the risk. I'm like a low risk person. I am very boring in that regard.
No, people really take that in. It's so important because as a coach, I have counseled too many couples where serious damage done because somebody made a choice when they were intoxicated and they were under the influence. And so, yeah, it's really, really important. And it's hard because we're in a culture that trains us to, if you're with somebody and there's sexual energy or you're attracted to them, you have a better chance to get high, get her drunk, get him, get stoned, go unconscious so you don't have to deal with the awkwardness. That is such a strong cultural imprint that we have that, and when I was working on the adolescent pregnancy show, almost all teenage girls who get pregnant, either she or the boy or both were under the influence when the pregnancy happened. And believe me, very few teenage pregnancies are good things. Now, again, anybody who was born as a result of a teen pregnancy or has had a teen pregnancy, God bless you for surviving and working through it. But it's not optimal. It's definitely not optimal. I saw you wave a finger.
I was just like, thank you for being inclusive to all those people who may have been born to a teenage mother and father.
I would not have gone there if it wasn't for you. I want you to know, because I said it, then I thought, okay, I'm going to call it the Roxie maneuver, right? From now on, that's going to be the Roxie maneuver. Think about who might be watching, who could possibly take that personally. And
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I have groups of friends where we've never been sexual before. We have chemistry, we could be. We've been at dinner parties together, and we might, maybe you're sipping on some fine tequila with our whatever it is we're eating. And there's that moment where everything's a little kind of loose feeling, and I'm like looking at them and they're looking at me, and I'm just thinking, no, I have this kind of martial art like training that even if I'm intoxicated, to whatever degree that is, like I don't get wasted. But I still have my discernment of saying, nope, this isn't going to happen. And that's something that I had to train too, because one thing I do not do is engage with people when they're intoxicated or I'm intoxicated. It's so dangerous. Oh my gosh. And it's not right relationship.
It's not right relationship.
But Roxanne and Scott, we get more loose when we have a little drink and we can be ourselves and it's more fun. Learn to be yourself sober, and then you'll enjoy those other moments even better.
Spoken by a very wise woman.
Spoken by generous. A wise woman.
Well, that's generous. True. That's
true. I'm just some crazy lady with foliage in my hair.
Okay, so we're almost going to wrap up, but
wait. If you have engaged with somebody when they're intoxicated or you're intoxicated, please do not shame yourself right now. We are not shaming you. Just move forward with this knowledge and information. And if you do need to go make amends because you did and it's questionable, go make amends and get in right relationship. Clean up your side of the street. Gotta fucking love AA, man. I don't go to AA, but I love their slogans. They're so good.
Yeah. So here's one last little piece for you. I've noticed a couple times tonight and in previous interactions, when I've complimented you, I've noticed that in my way of seeing it, you push it aside. And so proudly.
Yeah.
So remember when we were doing the little quiz in our mentorship course, it was like, how conscious are we about certain things and when are we in reaction? So I'm just asking you, and this is a genuine question. I'm curious, not prosecutorial curious, but childlike wonder curious. Do you have just a reaction, compliment, push away? Is that a reactive? Is that a reactive thing?
No. In general, if somebody says, "Oh, you look so pretty today," I'll say, "Thank you so much." If they say, "Wow, you're so smart. I appreciate your wisdom," I'll say, "Thank you so much." I think because we're on a platform right now, I would like to, and it's all like platforms are kind of like pedestals, and I'm like, no, I don't want to be preaching on some pedestal platform. And so if we were just having lunch together and there was people around and you said, "You're so wise," I would say, "Thank you. I appreciate that." And some old pattern came out where I don't want people to think that like I think I'm wise. But I do honor and acknowledge that I have a trained high degree of emotional intelligence, relational intelligence experience, and sexual and communication experience in relationships. Yes, I will take your compliments that I have that I know a lot and I have a lot of wisdom in these areas, and I know so little and I have so much more to learn. Like the more I learn, the more information I get, the more I realize I don't know. I know so little, because it's not that I don't know anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, I have a lot of information, and I'm like, oh my God, there's just a vast world of information out there that is just beyond me, and I'm still learning all the time.
Becoming masterful at something takes a very long time. There's a moment that just made such a big impression on me. It's generally regarded that Japan's greatest filmmaker, I'm using an absolute there, is Akira Kurosawa. And he's been making movies for 50 years. And quite a while ago, the Academy Awards honored him at the Oscars with an honorary Oscar. And I remember it was Steven Spielberg and George Lucas gave him the Oscar. And here's this guy, and he's in his 80s at this point, getting an honorary Oscar. And he very sincerely said, I've been making movies for 50 years, and I truly believe I'm just really beginning to understand how to do it. And that just stuck with me and he wasn't being bullshit humble. He was really being real. 50 years, pinnacle of success, honorary Oscar. And he says, I feel like I'm just beginning to really get it. So that level of curiosity, that level of desire to keep learning, as opposed to, yep, I've done it. I've made it for 50 years. I'm the great Kurosawa. No, I'm still learning, right? Yeah. It's such a beautiful quality. And maybe we all have that. Even on the things that we're wise about, or that we have a certain amount of experience or wisdom, keep learning. And I really respect that about you, Roxie. The ironic thing is you are very humble. And so I was just wondering, because sometimes some people do have trouble taking in a compliment. And if that happened to have been the case with you, I was just going to go with a little practice, which is to notice when we reactively push it away, and instead take a breath and sip it in like your favorite drink, like a Thai coconut. Just sip in that. Roxie, I so appreciate your humility. I so appreciate your authenticity. Sipping it in.
Thank you. I'm so taking that in, and I appreciate your compliments, and I do drink them in. Yeah. So thank you for bringing to light that little shadow. I always tell people when I talk about you, I'm like, I swear, I say Scott is fucking masterful at communication and relationship and empathy. I mean, if you want to talk about empathy, you go talk to Scott. He's the master. So I do call you that.
Thank you. And
you're welcome.
Every day I blow it. Every day I don't show enough empathy. I mean, how many times in this conversation I've used comparative words? He's the greatest. He's the wisest, right? That's so we're all still learning and growing. Well, I want to thank you very much, Roxie, for being here. I would love to let's come back, do it again, because you were so much fun. And I want to thank everybody for watching. I recognize that we never really got into having a relationship after a partner dies, but that's like a whole other topic. So I promise I will tackle it. I might even do just a private little Facebook Live on that, because it's a good topic. But it's 7:30 and my roommates have made dinner and it's getting dark and shadowy, and it's time to wrap up. But thank you, Roxanne. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your energy, your enthusiasm. I really had fun.
It was an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to come be on your platform and just share with your audience. And I really do feel like blessed to know you, and you're brilliant. You're a brilliant man, and I love you, and you're super sexy, and I love your hair, and I love your body, and I love your voice, and I love our communications, and I'm eternally grateful for our friendship. So thank you. And thank you for having me, and I look forward to coming back and sharing.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to Debbie Garcia, who made this happen. Debbie, thank you. Big thank you for who's like behind them, making it all happen while we get to be, on stage having fun. Debbie's who made this happen. So thank you so much, Debbie Garcia. And thank you everybody for watching. I'll go back, take a look at the comments and respond. Angel, thank you for your attempt to be with us. We appreciated your mime there for a moment there. And oh, and one last announcement. Tomorrow night, I'm hosting and co-producing a very cool event from 7:30 to 9:30 in the evening. It's a combination of a global meditation, great musicians, Satyan Raja and many other people are going to be there sharing some wisdom. So 7:30 to 9:30, join us for the Global Peace Meditation. We're calling it Saturday Night Live for the Global Peace Tribe. So it's going to be very cool. So join us for that. All right. This is it. There we go.